This was day 868 of the Trump administration. And to be candid, the reviews of the president's performance on this day in a cemetery in France sounded at first almost unavoidably patronizing. Those watching, those covering the event, gave him almost universal credit and high marks for reading the speech as was intended to be delivered, and for showing respect and deference and appreciation to the old men behind him, who 75 years ago today were boys, dropped into the surf from ships and forced to survive withering machine gun fire just to make it to the beach on their way to saving the world. Well, the president did that right before we'd learned he'd done something else as well. In an interview with Fox News, framed by over 9,000 grave markers, he attacked the Speaker of the House and a decorated combat veteran named Robert Mueller.
He made such a fool out of himself the last time because what people don't report is the letter he had to do to straighten out his testimony, because his testimony was wrong.
It's unclear what letter or testimony the president's referring to there, and there's new material we're about to show you from this interview tonight. Robert Mueller did read that 10-minute statement at his news conference in which he made clear his report did not exonerate Donald Trump. As we mentioned, the president also aimed insults at Nancy Pelosi, who led a bipartisan delegation today to the D-Day commemoration.
She's a nasty, vindictive, horrible person. The Mueller report came out. It was a disaster for them. They thought their good friend Bobby Mueller was going to give them a great report, and he came out with a report with 13 horrible, angry Democrats who were totally biased against me. Nancy Pelosi, I call her Nervous Nancy. Nancy Pelosi doesn't talk about it. Nancy Pelosi's a disaster, okay? She's a disaster. And let her do what she wants. You know what? I think they're in big trouble.
Pelosi is at the center of this struggle in her party caucus over whether or when to begin impeachment proceedings, even an inquiry against Donald Trump. Today, our NBC News colleague Andrea Mitchell asked the speaker about the potential impact if the House were to move forward.
We are so divided as a country right now. Do you worry about the politics right now, impeachment and everything else that's on the table, and how that can further divide us?
Well, again, with all due respect to your question, I'm not here to talk about impeachment.
There have been reports that Pelosi and Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler of New York are at odds on this topic of impeachment. He's said to be opposed to her go slow approach. We have much more on that ahead. There's also new reporting on Nadler's other project, and that's getting Robert Mueller to testify publicly. Politico is reporting he's told Democratic leaders at a closed-door meeting this week that he could issue a subpoena to Mueller within 2 weeks if a deal for public testimony can't be secured. Just yesterday, Nadler said he was confident Mueller would appear at a hearing. As all that unfolds, there are questions about the House Democrats' effort to hold Attorney General Barr and former White House counsel Don McGahn in contempt of Congress for defying subpoenas for Mueller's full report and the supporting materials and documents. The full House is set to vote Tuesday, but a new resolution released just today appears to speed up the legal process by which Democrats can ask a court to intervene and force witnesses to give up information, and by extension, that could make a contempt vote unnecessary. And amid all this, the legal battles over Mueller's report, we're also getting new information about another key witness for the prosecution. Notes from Michael Flynn's interview with the FBI back in 2017 have now been released unsealed by a federal court. The former national security advisor to Trump pleaded guilty to lying to FBI agents about his 2016 conversations with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. The notes reveal that on December 28 of 2017, the day Obama expelled Russians from the U.S. for election interference, Kislyak, quote, asked Flynn to set up a VTC, a video teleconference between President-elect Trump and Russian President Putin for January 21st of 2017, 1 day after the inauguration. Michael Flynn, a reminder, is still awaiting sentencing. Today, his longtime attorney, Robert Kellner, notified the court he was no longer representing Michael Flynn. Prosecutors have also released a voicemail that was left for that same attorney, Robert Kellner, by President Trump's one-time personal lawyer, John Dowd. This call was made not long after Flynn agreed in 2017 to cooperate with the special counsel investigation with the feds. Now, we've already been able to read the transcript of what you're about to hear, and we've read it on the air, but sometimes hearing the human voice helps. So here now the actual recording of this voicemail message from Trump's lawyer to Flynn's lawyer.
Hey, Rob. This is John again. Maybe I'm sympathetic. I understand your situation, but let me see if I can state it in stronger terms. If you have, it wouldn't surprise me if you've gone on to make a deal and work with the government. I understand that you can't join a joint defense. That's one thing. If, on the other hand, there's information that implicates the president, then we've got a national security issue, or maybe a national security issue. I don't know. Some issue we've got to deal with, not only for the president but for the country. So, then we need some kind of heads up, just for the sake of protecting all interests if we can, without you having to give up any confidential information. So, and if it's the former, then, remember what we've always said about the president and his feeling toward Flynn. That still remains. But in any event, let me know, and I appreciate your listening and taking the time. Thanks, Paul.
So much to talk about there. Just an hour to do it. Here for our leadoff discussion on a Thursday night, Mimi Rocah, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now a distinguished fellow in criminal justice at the Pace University School of Law. Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post, and Anita Kumar, White House correspondent and associate editor for Politico. Good evening and welcome to you all. Mimi, you get to go first with a very simple question. What do you learn from listening to a human voice on that recording?
You learn a lot, Ryan. As you said, it's one thing to read the words, but when you hear his intonations, when you hear, frankly, his hesitancy, he's struggling with the words because there's a certain consciousness of guilt going on here. He knows he shouldn't be doing this. Now, you can question, why would someone leave this in a voicemail? It seems pretty dumb, frankly, but he's uncomfortable with it. I think he knows on some level, I really shouldn't be doing this, but it tells you the importance of what he feels he's doing because he's doing it anyway. And there's so many clues in what he says. I mean, for example, he says, what we've always said about how the president feels about Flynn. Well, first of all, this isn't the first time this has come up. They've had these conversations before. That's what that says. We have always said, this isn't Dowd going out and saying how Trump feels about the president. This is how Trump feels about Flynn. This is what Trump has told Dowd about how he feels about Flynn to pass it on. So, look, Mueller didn't go there. Mueller didn't subpoena Dowd and try to sort of pierce the veil of the attorney-client privilege and find out how involved was Trump in this. What discussions did they specifically have about this? It's clear to me that Dowd is committing a crime here. The question is, how involved and what would the evidence be against Trump? Common sense tells us he's involved, but what would the proof be? But Congress can go there. They don't have to stand by the attorney-client privilege in the way that Mueller did.
You know your way around a recording as a former Fed. Most of them, of course, organized crime and not presidential politics. But there is that certain element that reading a flat transcript on a page doesn't deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. I've listened to dozens and dozens of recordings of organized crime and other people. And if you play a recording for a jury, every trial lawyer knows this. It just brings home what is happening in a way that a transcript doesn't. And this shows you, and we've seen this again, even with Mueller's 10-minute press conference, hearing words, hearing someone speak as opposed to reading a report is so compelling. And this is why Congress needs to get going as best they can on having witnesses, whether it be playing recordings like this. I think they should subpoena Dowd. I really don't see any barrier to that. I'm not saying he'll just willingly come, but there, frankly, are not a lot of legitimate privileges he could invoke on that. And having Mueller testify, even though he doesn't want to.
Eugene, it won't surprise you to learn that, shall we say, Fox News did not dwell on this story tonight. Here is how they went alternatively.
Speaker Pelosi now apparently telling senior Democrats she'd like to see Trump behind bars. Based on no actual crime, she wants a political opponent locked up in prison. That happens in banana republics, beyond despicable behavior. And by the way, they would literally turn, in many ways, the USA into a country we would no longer recognize.
Back to what we're talking
I'm
about.
sorry, I missed part of that. I was hearing this vague chant of "lock her up,"
And
lock
Michael
her up.
Flynn may have
and
said
Michael
that at the
Flynn,
convention.
I believe I heard him say that at the convention.
Why leave a voicemail like that on somebody?
I don't know. But I read the transcript like everybody, and I didn't get all of that out of the transcript. You were right about that. And it is the hesitancy and the consciousness that this is, I've got to sort of talk my way around this because I can't go at it directly because I really shouldn't be going at it at all. Yeah. This is like not something I'm comfortable with, but I got to do it. And also a sense that Dowd is thinking about the president, thinking about what he might not know about what Flynn and Trump might know. And so he's trying to maneuver and find that out as well.
Anita, how will we ever know, based on the beat that you cover every day, the level of concern inside the West Wing, whether, for example, the departure of Mr. Flynn's counsel is based on the knowledge that this audio was coming out today?
Well, I mean, I think there is concern. You can see from the president's remarks that he feels concerned, or he's feeling that he wants to that he's thinking about things, wants to comment about them. He's clearly still thinking about the Mueller report and how that's going to play out in his testimony if he does testify in the next couple weeks. They were knowing that this was coming out. They've known each little piece that comes out. Obviously, they're following that. I have to say the White House, though, is really so much is going on right now about these tariffs with Mexico. It's all we're hearing about. It's a whole different subject, I know, but this feels very different than some policy that the president usually has, because it feels like a lot of people think this is going to happen, and a lot of people were unprepared for it, including his aides.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.